the first time, we're joined with Dr., and I want to make sure I get this right, Asad, is it Zaman or Zaman?
Zaman.
Zaman, thank you.
Yes.
How are you doing today? And just for the audience to know, Dr. Zaman, he's a vice chancellor at the Pakistan Institute for Development and Economics. Um, I read this paper that you sent me, and I was fascinated by it. And I thought the audience may be, let's say, interested in the point of view. You're not the first person I heard say this, that it's super interesting that money is not included when we're talking about economics, even though it's the beating heart of the way each of us encounters economics on a daily basis. Go into that for me. Why do you make the argument, or why do you say that money is not discussed when we're talking about economics, even though, in the most obvious terms, if I go and buy a soda, I'm using money to buy that soda? Why is it buried in economic dialogue or discussions?
Yes. The reason I said it is because I'm a professional economist. I studied economics at the top graduate schools in the USA, and I
Yeah.
taught at the top 10 universities economics. And in our PhD programs and around the world, we are taught in economics that money does not matter to economics. Basically, there's a theory which says that money is neutral. Another theory which mentions the quantity theory of money, and all of these theories say that money does only one thing, and that is that it determines the prices level. So if you double the amount of money in the economy, prices will double, and nothing real will happen. Meaning that the real economy. So the example that is often taught to students, that just imagine that every rupee in your pocket is now worth 2 rupees, or that you just get double the amount of money. So there's been a huge change in the amount of money, but what will happen as a result is all of the prices will also double, and then basically everybody will be exactly where they are.
When they
So this is
began.
what we are taught, and even in central banks all around the world, this is the theory they operate on. And that, and if you look at the textbook definitions, what is money? Money is a store of value. Money is a means of exchange. Money is a measure of the value of things. All of these things are misleading. I mean, they're all true, but they do not mention the most important fact about money, which is that money is a source of power.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that is missing from the textbooks completely.
Is money neutral?
No, absolutely not. Money is the most important driver of the economy, and that's why economists completely missed the global financial crisis. Not a single person in the entire profession had any idea that this was about to happen. And so that's because they have no role for money in their theory. So when money misbehaves as it did, and basically that was the source of the crisis, the global financial crisis, and hundreds of monetary crises around the globe keep happening almost continuously. There's a survey by International Monetary Fund which lists about 130 monetary and banking crises over the past 3 decades. So it's a very common thing which happens, but basically we don't have the theory. I mean, in conventional economic theory, doesn't have the tools, it doesn't even have the language to understand the connection between money and power.
Your point is that the fact that that there's a psychological aspect to money that is not really included in the way that money is taught, meaning they teach money almost in the abstract. They don't teach about it in the way it's used in actual matter of fact, physical matter reality. And because they don't teach it that way, they miss some of the psychological effects that come into play when people are using cash. Like for example, the status aspect of money. That it's not just used to buy food, it's also housed as how I view myself, how a society deems itself, let's say by its GDP, how well a society is doing, how that society is viewed. Like all of these things are psychological aspects of money that are not necessarily included in any theory of money in earnest. Is that fair? Is that a proper way to think about it? Or please correct me if I'm getting it
Yes,
wrong.
I think there are two aspects of money which are concealed. One is the impact of money on social relationships, so that has to do with the psychology. But much more important is the connection of money to power, which you didn't even ask about because that's a question which doesn't occur. But basically, you can divide in a modern economy. You can divide people into those who can create money and those who are forced to work for it. And
Right.
even millionaires, doctors, engineers who are making good money are still laborers in the sense that they have to earn their money. They have to work to earn their money. But the financiers, the very few, the top 1%, we call them, or the even top 0.1%, they can create money at will without having to do any work. And these are the people who run the economy, who run the planet, because
Yeah.
they can, if they need $1 trillion, they can just print it up or put in some electronic keystrokes and say, okay, here's $1 trillion. So they can do anything they like. So that's one aspect. That's the more important aspect, the power aspect. But it is enabled by the psychological and the social aspect, the idea that we can use money to buy everything, including friends and love, happiness, and anything that we need. That's a concept that's not true, but it's very strongly drilled into all members of a monetary economy. So
Yeah.
we're taught to strive for wealth, that the meaning of life, the pursuit of wealth. So that's the psychological. And of course, money is, as in the modern economy, is destroys human relationships. So in the sense of the psychological sense, it is basically, it started with the legitimization of interest a few centuries ago in England and Europe.
Usury.
Basically, what is interest? It means that you have excess money, more than you need, and somebody else in the society needs it. So the traditional approach, which views the society as an organic whole where we are all responsible for each other, in such a society, one would say, and that's what the prohibition of interest is about in all religions. It's about helping your fellow when he is in need.
Right.
If you have a brother and he's in need of money and you have excess, you just give it to him. And of course, you can give it to him as a loan, and he will pay it back when he can. And that's the concept of qarz hasana, uh, the the human loan, social loan, as you can call it, which is done with the concept that we are all members of the same society. As opposed to this, there is a adversarial loan, which says, I see you are in need, and I have something that you need,
Take
so I'll give
advantage.
it to you, provided that can make a profit from this
Yeah.
deal. So basically, the issue is one of exploiting someone who is in need. And that's the nature of the transaction, the monetary transaction. And basically, there's a book written by someone who's with the title that the It's something like usury, from universal brotherhood to universal otherhood. So it characterizes, the title of the book already characterizes the nature of usury. And it's not just usury. There's a very
Okay.
deep book by Karl Polanyi called The Great Transformation. And he says that the essence of capitalism is that the social relationships between people were displaced by market relationships. So the market became dominant, and we can buy and sell things. And he says that the key to understanding that is the labor market, which is essential for the capitalist society.
Right.
So we are all trained to be human resources, to think of it as natural to sell ourselves for money. See, when you take a job, the spirit of the transaction for a job is that you are paid wages, and then the boss can tell you whatever he wants you to do. It's not as opposed to this in a more humane society. We work. Our work is meaningful, not for money. That is,
Right.
if we work in a bakery, then we take pride in providing goods to the people, providing bread to the people. This is the source of our job satisfaction, that we are doing something that is socially useful. But in a capitalist society, you're taught that earning money is the only source of meaning. And
Right.
so I can't count the number of students who came to me for advice, asking me what they should study so that they could make the most amount of money.
Oh, that's such a good
Always,
point.
I always try to divert them into saying that, look, it's my experience as in life that if you do thing that is significant, that something that interests you, that helps society, this is what also brings a lot of money, because you have deeper motivation to do it. But students don't normally buy this.
I know that's hard. That's hard. Like, because if you're look, I'm telling, like, if you're in the U.S. and you have, let's say, $50,000
Yeah,
debt over your head the moment that you get out of school, and your
yeah,
first thought is, I need to get a job. I need to pay for a
exactly,
house. I need to pay for a car. I need to
exactly,
pay for all this stuff. But your
exactly.
point is, it's it's one thing if I'm doing something that A, I enjoy doing, and B, adds value to a society because it's needed. As you pointed out, bakery, I'm baking bread because people need to eat. Okay, I have a value that's direct in the
Yes,
sense of self fulfillment and in the sense of society.
yes,
If I'm building houses, okay, I'm building this person a house. I enjoy doing it. It's a craft, it's a skill, and a person gets a house at the end of it. It's another thing if I'm at a bank moving around numbers. Okay. It's like, yes, I'm taking a paycheck. No, I'm not
yes.
fulfilled. And look, I'm telling you this from software. When I was doing software, I felt the exact same way. It was
Mm,
kind of like I am building stuff for people that I don't care about, and I am just a hired hand to do it.
right.
And there was many a days where it was just kind of like this job sucks. You're
Yes,
paid well,
yes,
but there was no I'm building stuff for people to get rich. There was no, sense of satisfaction in the context of the job. The job
yes.
I'm doing now, I get a sense of satisfaction from, even though the pay is spotty, if that makes sense. Like, I understand your point. I do understand your point. But is there a way to get around that societal wise, especially in a modern economy?
Absolutely, there is. We have been conditioned to think that there is no alternative. And that's one of the most powerful illusions of capitalism. And so it is a long journey because we are deep in the pit. But the first thing to understand is that money does not buy happiness. I mean, this is something which one of my fellow professors at University of Pennsylvania, Richard Easterlin, he started doing studies on this in the 1970s, studying the correlation between money and happiness at the aggregate level, at the national level. And
Mhm.
so he found, much to his surprise, that there is no correlation, that countries which are extremely wealthy can have very low levels of life satisfactions, and countries which are very poor can have much higher levels of life satisfaction. And similarly, when you measure it across time, that then he says that over the past 100 years, there has been enormous economic growth in many countries, and today the ordinary man enjoys a standard of living which was belonged to princes and kings in 100 years ago, and only they could have such luxury. But the level of happiness has not increased because people basically measure their standard of living by referring to the average around them. And when the average around them rises, then they are unhappy even if they have a lot. And so because of this, we are trapped in a rat race. Everybody is trying to increase wealth, but if everybody doubles their wealth, then nobody is better off because they're all judging. So that's one aspect why money doesn't buy happiness. But then people turn to the second part, that what does bring happiness? And they found that it is the ancient answers. First of all, you need to have character. Character meaning that you should be able to be patient in the face of adversity. All of us will face troubles, and we should be able to take that well. Also, we should be thankful. Be one of the greatest aspects of happiness is to be happy with what you have instead of always seeking for more.
Yeah.
And that's what happens when you are. And that's one of the things that capitalism teaches you very specifically. Always want more than what you have. That means always be unhappy. We are constantly, because capitalism is all about producing more than is necessary. Capitalism started with the Industrial Revolution. All societies all over the world were self-sufficient, and self-sufficiency was a virtue. That is, have what you want and not to desire more than what you want. This was considered good, but industrialization cannot survive in a society where people are contented, because it produces lots more than people want. So today we are all living very wasteful lives. We buy things we don't want. There was a study that millions of dollars of goods people purchase from the stores and leave unopened, and they go in the package that they were bought into the garbage. The man never even uses it. Psychologically, we are conditioned to think that consumption brings happiness. So when people are very, very unhappy, they go on shopping binges. But so these are not truths. These are things we have been conditioned to believe. But so we need character. We need to be grateful for what we have instead of seeking after what we don't have. And social relationships. Family is the biggest factor in happiness. Today we are taught to sacrifice our family for our careers. People work from, sun up to sundown because they want to earn more money, and they don't have any time to make friends or build social relationships or time for their families. And we're taught to think that that is the way to live, that money is more important than friends and families. Social relationships.
I got into a fight with my ex after I was on my network job, and the job went belly up. It became this thing of like, okay, I need to make cash. I need to be able to balance my expenses. I need to be able to do so forth. And that was the only thing on my mind. Nothing else mattered. Everything mattered less. And I guess you do make the argument that you're trained to do that, but you're trained to do that by real world phenomena. Like it's a balance sheet. I need to
Yes,
pay for my
it's a
house.
powerful illusion, but basically we can learn to live off the grid. We can learn to live without money. That's, of course, a very far distance from where we are, so that doesn't seem realistic. But if you understand that it is possible, then you can make small moves in that direction. Reduce your lifestyle. Instead, we were taught to search for better and better lifestyles. Instead of that, try to think of the simpler lifestyles. Try to learn how to do with less and make small moves. Don't if you jump off the highway, you will you will see. Basically, we are rushing down a highway in the wrong direction. So the thing is, you have to make a U-turn. You can't. Although that's what you want to do. You want to go in the other direction. But what first thing do is you slow down and start looking for an exit. And that's how we have to operate. That we examine our life and we look at how we can take 10% out of the race to earn more money and to spend it, and give 10% of time to friends and family and building character and thinking about our soul and our spiritual existence, and spend 90% of the time engaged with capitalism. And we'll be all be and once you and work on increasing that 10% gradually,
Yeah.
building and take others with you, because when you can't do this alone, man is a social being. So you can't individually. I mean, this is one of the biggest, another illusion of capitalism. The creation of the labor market required this philosophy of individualism, where you are you,
Yes.
and we celebrate who you are, and the search for identity is critical. So I've seen so many movies in which some woman or some man is engaged in a standard normal family life, and then suddenly he says, oh, I'm not fulfilled. So what he does is abandons his wife and family and goes off to search for meaning. And so this is and this is celebrated as a great triumph, a wonderful thing. And basically that's what we're being taught, that social relationships are meaningless, and meaning lies within you. But actually, we meaning is a collective thing. We work together for common goals, and that is what makes it meaningful, because individuals are small, but if we work for large goals and we work together with people, then we can achieve tremendous things. And
But
so
isn't it purely ideological? I
how's that?
mean, like, isn't it purely ideological? Like, there's no point. Ultimately, we make our points. And if we agree that, look, I agree with you that building anything requires a social contract, meaning we have to work together to build big things.
Yes.
Agreed. But an individual doesn't have to believe that. I mean, a person can say, there's no point, there's no objective. I create my own point, I create my own goal. He's not wrong for that. That's not right or wrong, even though it may be detrimental to society, if that makes sense. Or
Well,
do
you
you
see,
disagree with that?
this is what happened. This is basically existentialism, the philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre and others. He's one of the most famous ones.
Yeah.
And basically, it starts with the denial of God. See, once you say that there is no God, then what is the source of meaning? And the critical philosophy is that meaning, existence precedes essence. That is, we come into being, and then we create meanings. There is no
Yes.
meaning outside of me. So once you take that stance, then there are three different schools of thought which have developed, and normally modern people, and all of this starts with individualism. I am the only source of meaning. There's nothing else. The other people don't matter, because I'm me. When I die, I'll be in my own grave, and so all connections will be lost. And so this is all. So that, first of all, once you say that, then every relationship is superficial. You can't really have significant relationships if you think in this way. But so Existentialism says that we can create meaning. So it's a very optimistic approach to life, that maybe I can find meaning in paintings, maybe I can find meaning in playing a good game of tennis, and so on. So that's one thought. But other philosophers in this same line are absurdists, Dadaists. They say that, no, this is an illusion. This is a comforting illusion to think that we can find meaning. We can create meaning. We can be like God and create meaning. And that's exactly what Sartre says, more or less explicitly, that we are all mini gods and we can create meaning and we can imbue the whole world with meaning, even though it comes out of a random collection of accidents and everything is just randomly flying around. There's no meaning, but we can create meaning. So the Dadaists say that, no, that's nonsense. We cannot create meaning. We have to learn to live without meaning. And so that's also still an absurdist approach. Waiting for Godot is one of the examples. And basically, there is no meaning, but we can live with it. And then there's the third school of thought. I think Albert Camus says that the only significant philosophical question is suicide.
Suicide, right?
So that says that there is no meaning, we cannot create meaning, and we cannot live in a world without meaning. So should we just commit suicide, or should we just live lives of despair and
quiet desperation,
sadness and tragedy?
A person could also say, though, that they find meaning in their kids, in their job. Well, yes, in their job in some cases, but at some point the job is going to end, in their family, in their society, in their political space.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't have to go to this level of should I commit suicide? Because there's no point. I guess I'm saying that same person who can say none of this matters, I choose, can also say I choose my family, my government, my society. I choose to do things that bring joy to other people because since nothing else matters, this is the thing that matters. Like, does it really have to be that level of crisis or existential angst?
You see, individualism says that the only source of pleasure and happiness and well-being and meaning is myself. So it teaches you not to look beyond yourself. So the thing is that man is the most important of the creation of God. So certainly, if we search for meaning outside ourselves, then we are more likely to be successful, because if we build social relationships, if we try to help people, we try to serve, this will definitely be a more meaningful life, because now we are serving the creation of God. So there is a saying, hadith in Islam, that all of the creation is the family of God, and so those and God loves best those who serve his family. So serving the family of God is a source of meaning, and definitely it gives much more satisfaction than having millions of dollars in your bank.
Yeah.
And we have so many examples and surveys of millionaires whose wives have left them and children have left them, even though they showered them with gifts and they gave them $1 million cars and islands, but they never gave them the time that they wanted. So the social relationship was not there, and you can't compensate for it by gifts and by money.
By the way, I agree with
social relationships are definitely a very important source of meaning, and all of these happiness studies and well-being studies say that this is at the center of human happiness. So, but all of that requires going outside of abandoning the individualistic philosophy that we have been taught.
Is it fair to say, though, that the teaching of that individualist philosophy is implicit? Like, needing to pay rent is a real thing. And even if you cut the amount that you earn by 10% and you focus on family, you still need to buy food. Like, many people are food insecure, which
Yes.
means that the amount that they make is just barely making ends meet. But those people still have that mindset of, I need to earn, I need to do this, I need to do
Yes.
that. Like that is
Well, you see,
hard.
we have to differentiate between those people who are living at water level where they're barely afloat, and people who are living comfortably and trying to
Right.
buy the second car and get into the athletic club and so on. So they're trying, they have more money than they can use, and they're trying to think of ways of they can use this money to increase their happiness. So they're thinking that
But just to
they
interrupt
get
you real quick, just
thousand.
to interrupt, they
Yeah.
still are taught the same thing. Like those people who are at the athletic club, many of them were at water level at one point. Like meaning they are learning things. Like our society teaches us the same thing, whether you're a billionaire or whether you're not. And I'm saying that is a hard lesson to unlearn, especially when we look at how much we have as a means of security. Like, I may get sick in 6 months. Okay, so I need enough money in my bank account to cover me when I get sick. It's not purely just, and look, I'm agreeing with you, by the way, on most of this. I guess I'm saying, though, that future security is kind of built into this argument of increasing one's assets because you have
Yes.
no idea what's going to happen to you, especially in a
Yes.
society where you can
You
be
see,
very
this is
vulnerable.
another illusion of capitalism, that diamonds are a girl's best friend. Typically, in a traditional society, we are all friends of each other,
Yes,
and so if you have 1,000 brothers, you're not worried about the future because someone will take care of you, and we will all be. You see, cancer is a rare disease. Attacks only 1 in 100,000 people. And but if you get cancer, then you need a huge amount of money for the treatment.
right.
So in an individualistic society, you are very, very concerned about the possibility of cancer, and you will get your health insurance and you'll pay a huge amount. So everybody is preparing to spend $1 million in case they get cancer because they have nobody else to rely on. But in a
Yes,
collective society where we're all friends and social relationships are strong, everybody puts by $100 for medical emergency, and the one person who gets cancer, everybody pitches in to help, and so he doesn't need. So in a collective society where we look out for each other, you don't need that much money to get by.
I
But in an
see.
individualistic society, you need a huge amount because you don't have anyone else to turn to when you're in trouble. So you must earn money. So it's a sort of a mutual self-reinforcing trap that once you learn to think of there is no society, we are all individuals and we are all looking for only for our own interest, and our relationship is a market relationship. If I give you something, then you will give me something. That's a market relationship, not a social relationship. So we are used to even thinking of our marriages and our children as, in terms of the liabilities, how much does it cost to bring up the children, and what will they end up
That's so
giving
true.
me, and so
That's
on.
so true. That's so true. I mean, I was trying to. It is easier for me to pay somebody than to ask somebody for something.
Exactly. That's
Yeah,
that's because we live in a market society. Everything is measured in terms of money, including the value of our own lives. If a man makes a small amount of money, he's not worth much. And if a man makes a huge amount of money, you respect him because he's a
do
he's a
you
most important, valuable person, and he gets into
do
the.
you foresee that ever switching or changing? Like what
Hmm?
would like? Because you're right, it's very ingrained, and it's from the time you're born to the time you drop dead. That is your reality. Everything is based on cost, even though cost is this kind of intangible thing. And this could be, I guess, the last question. I think you're right about the degradation in regards to the way we see each other, especially in regards to a market economy. Everything is a cost. How we view ourselves is based in cost. Even our relationships with one another is based in cost. It's like this kind of, it infects everything. It affects how we engage with each other. It's hard to see a different world in that. And I guess my thing is, do you see a different world from that? I mean, one last point. If I agree with you, and I agree with you that I was just having a conversation with my earlier guests about this kind of rot in the society and the way it even rots our political system, because you have all of these people who are just effectively bought. Because from their point of view, it's no longer about, okay, we're doing the job of society that is demanded of a democratic order. It becomes, we are paid to do something that is against societal interests, despite the fact that you might have 90% of people who want something different. Will this collapse as a direct result of that capitalistic rot that kind of just infects
Absolutely.
our democratic system?
Yes, that's right. So we have forgotten basically in the textbooks of economics, basically what we're doing, there's a organic conception of society that we are all part of a collective unit. We are all striving together for a common goal. That's what a traditional society is built on. Once you reject God, then it turns out that there's only one way to think of human beings, and that is as a evolved animal, because if there's no God, then that's the only way that we could have come into existence. And then you have this Darwinist notion, which is actually not true. Animals are much better than what the picture shows, where it says that we live in a jungle of fierce competition, cutthroat competition. If I get the opportunity, I'll slit your throat, and if you get that, you'll slit mine. And so there is no concept of cooperation. And so basically the world we live in is in a jungle, and the law is the survival of the fittest. And this is the conception of society that we are trained to think in. But actually traditional societies are built on cooperation, on generosity, on social responsibility. We take care of each other in times of trouble, and on a bigger purpose of life than just eating and consuming. So we live not for. So these are the two opposing and sort of diametrically opposed conceptions of life. And so if you are trapped in the jungle of fierce competition, then you can't see an alternative. And this is part of the illusion also, that there is no alternative. This is explicitly, but there are alternatives, and the door is open, but we are trained not to look for it and not to walk away from it. We are taught to be afraid of what is out there if we abandon these capitalistic ideas about what the world is. And so it's psychological, as you said at the beginning. The money is a psychological. We are addicted to money, and we think that money is the solution to all problems, even though we see billionaires who lead miserable lives. And surveys show that more than 50% of the millionaires, when asked the one question which one would expect them to answer properly, that do you have enough money? And the majority of them say, no, we don't have enough money for our needs.
I need more. It's like, how much do you need? More. Dr. Asad Zaman, thank you for this. This has been enlightening. I swear to God it has. Thank you for this. I really appreciate this conversation. Dr. Zaman, he's Vice Chancellor at the Pakistan Institute for Development Economics. I really hope you join me again to have further this conversation. I really appreciated this. Thank you for this.
You're welcome.
All right. I appreciated that conversation.